Going to get started. Thank you everyone for coming. I'm very honored and just so appreciative to the amazing Orcas community that you're here to see Rinpoche. And I've known Rinpoche for over 15 years. I've practiced with my Sangha Ariba, and this group came all the way from Nepal and also Southern California to visit here. I've been wanting to introduce them to Orcas Island, and they have fallen in love with it, of course, and are here and able to offer a teaching today. Rinpoche has spent his time in Nepal and also in Taiwan and here in California. Well, not here in California, the US. With a Sangha near Los Angeles. We're in the Tachi Mountains. And our translator today is Rigzen Norbu, and Rigzen has an amazing experience of having Tibetan lineage and a Dharma lineage, and also was raised in America as well. So he bridges these two worlds and is an amazing translator. And so we are happy to have you here. We're going to talk for about an hour, and then we'll have a question and answer period, and then also an opportunity to make an offering to Rinpoche if you'd like. Thank you so much for coming.
No,
hello, everybody. My name is Rigzen. I will be the translator for today. I speak Tibetan and English, and I will try my best to translate a little background of Rinpoche. Sorry, I'm not used to using microphones to translate. A little background in regards to Rinpoche. He is a fully ordained Tibetan Buddhist monk from the Nyingma lineage, Vajrayana Buddhism, which is a little not so. It's a lineage from Tibetan Buddhism. And then around 11, he became a fully ordained monk. 13, 14, escaped Tibet from the Chinese Communist occupation, went to Nepal, met his root teacher at that age, and ever since then has been doing his Buddhist thing as a fully ordained monk and a accomplished Tibetan Buddhist master of meditation, also known as Rinpoche. And he will be today talking to me, and I will be talking to all of you about the subtle nuances in the belief of the Tibetan Buddhist interpretation of karma and how that interplays with kind of all that stuff that goes on with us. So without further ado, I think Gelong Rinpoche, we call him Gelong Kalsang Rinpoche, if anyone's wondering. Gelong means fully ordained monk in Tibetan. And Gelong Kalsang Rinpoche means fully ordained Tibetan Buddhist teacher, and his name is Kalsang, if anyone's wondering. So without further ado, he will start. Awesome. So first you wanted to start off saying everyone who's taken the time today to come here from the bottom of his heart is very honored. Thank you for giving him your time and welcome. So I think, as Anne already said, he just wanted to say this is the first time he's ever really been to an island like this in the continental United States. He's very impressed by the natural beauty of the island, and he's really enjoying himself here. I just want to say you guys all have a very lovely home. And during this time,
Maybe one of you has to turn it off.
Yeah.
if There's some.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Not get I think here's your show. Here's your show.
You guys keep having a problem with the mic, just one and hand it back and forth.
Okay, I think we're gonna have to do
Yeah,
that.
one of the issues.
So, Gelong Kalsang, Ngiye Bishop, and I'll then you both be sharing. Alright. That's awesome. So Rinpoche has noticed during his time on your guys' island, he's really appreciated the community that's been built around this island, so to speak. It's very pristine, well preserved, very well kept, very in touch with the kind of natural order of things here. And what he's noticed while he's been here because of that is it's very, very relaxing to his mind and body and his spirit. And he thinks it's a really wonderful place to do retreat and meditation in his opinion for himself. He just is also saying that.
Others. Land on the coaches, records.
Listen up,
Anyway, they follow land on the coach.
listen,
Sugars.
listen up.
Oh,
So today, Gelong Kalsang has heard that the request was to be on a teaching on what we call karma. And we're going to be, well, he is going to be talking a little bit about that, and he wanted me to just kind of preface everything by saying that's what this whole thing is going to be about today, a very, very subtle and small, kind of little humble capacity.
what's that? Land on the one Tanga. Namasan gave a Dumba Chundan the Jinjuk in the Chani. Scientific Sum Chihila Shan. Can you like
So in the Tibetan Buddhist faith and sense, how we relate to or believe or conceive of karma is really taught upon by the historical Buddha in Buddhism. Buddha has kind of talked about and described this thing in Tibetan Buddhism. It is called Lei Jumdri. You will hear this phrase a lot when Gelong Kalsang and I talk back and forth. It's Lei Jumdri, cause and effect, and then in Sanskrit it's Palike, it's karma. That's what we all kind of refer to it as. And Gelong Kalsang said the Buddha, and then Tibetan Buddhist and Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism, Hinayana Buddhism, kind of in all sectors, it's kind of really based around, Buddhism itself is kind of based around this idea of cause and effect and the interplay of this within all phenomena, so to speak, from the subatomic level to the grandest levels, ever in flux, you know. So that's kind of what we want to talk about today. And so from that, he hopes to try and teach just a tiny bit on that today.
Then Tanga Sanjay Tabachamos, Mayana Signala. Lady Tamakin the just down in Tabachim Sumana, the Sunore. Then the young Papa Chumina like Kafina. Okay, there's a mountain.
Sorry,
That's one.
sorry,
Or the need to put Chumukafina. Legend Namki Leta Kawa Dayam Shimisa. So she tell about one travel to Mumbai cure step. The legend is then it mark into just towns. Sanjay Sombaril. So Timak Nashi. Timakare and the Tanyam Boyar. The Yagachana, who was the moon. Tagamutawayumers.
Jumadi.
Timakas Nanga. Timak Tisuga. Yeah, then the Timak into just doesn't. And the sword on it. You might have come out and the Yamboyore.
Losla,
So the Timakaka Yamare.
Lana,
The Gavachana Timana Yamboyore.
Losla.
Let the judge and Yamboyore or take you. Yagat to any year chet and progress.
Losla, the Nishan, Mahayana, Tanhine, Tekchina, Tekman Nishan, then the same, then the Chico.
Sorry, Techilata, Lenny Timakin, somewhere.
Losla,
Tamela till Legion Namni Latamista, Mother Miss Lembatanu, Kavajatona, led lot of matters. Yakochela Yakungiri, the Chachana to Chamungiri,
That's right.
Jasona, you are so matters.
That's right. So in Buddhism, there are more commonly referred to two kind of thought processes, the Hinayan process and the Mahayan process. You may have heard the term bodhicitta or bodhisattva, and that refers to a supremely compassionate being or Buddhahood. That's more commonly associated with the Mahayana path, which is considered to be more of a selfless path towards enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, whereas Hinayan is considered a bit more of a sort of selfish path in regards to you focus fully on yourself to achieve enlightenment very fast for the benefit of yourself and to kind of end the karmic cycle you are associated with. So it's for the benefit of yourself or for the benefit of all sentient beings. It's called Hinayan Buddhism versus Mahayan Buddhism. And in both capacities, the Buddha has some sayings associated with that as an example of kind of what we're getting into here when we talk about karma. So in the Mahayan path, the Buddha has kind of extensively said cause and effect or karma is with one as one's shadow is constantly with one. And that's not, it's like whether it's the independent origination of things, whether it's a benign action, whether it's a negative action, whatever it is, in any capacity associated with how you may feel about one thing or another, these nuanced things that occur from everything related with cause and effect just kind of sticks with the individual, like their shadow. It's just independent, it's inseparable from you. In the Mahayan tradition, that is what the belief is, and it's more of a kind of laid out sentence or phrase. And the Theravadan or Hinayanan path, or the self-enlightenment path for the benefit of yourself, it's a bit more of any action associated with your shadow or your the shadow is related to karma. It's just we're using the phrase of karma and cause and effect are attached to you, much like your shadow is attached to you on a sunny day. So in this way, Buddha taught or spoke a bit more about it in regards to if you do bad actions, this bad karma is really stuck to you. And then if you do positive actions, this good karma is really stuck to you. But then when you take that to the Mahayana level, it becomes a bit more of an open statement and not so much of a nuanced statement.
Sangaki Yolayang led Dini ledi the Chui Shundanda Leon Chunutanda Kalando Namintante Rangi Lerechum se led with Chunashing Matula Dum Chukela Kadito Mari or that Chumashing la Gavanashi. Led Yapochana to Bochano, Tantachi Parangre, Tarangres.
Listen, Diti Tekwa Sana.
Sangak Tachapagi, Agayan Tekasungers. Lady Chui Shundaka, Leon Chulung Tando Kalach. Namintang, Rangi Lele Chung, Shini. Lady number Mibali Chungri, Yapochano, Go Yapumipa, the Jachana, go Dunga Yapochanan, Deva, Go Yapumin, Devanyang, Ote. That Mayana Hinayan that was Sungi Nan Sundang Matare to Tandachi Parangre.
And then finally, in the kind of Vajrayana sense, which is considered a more esoteric or secret tantric Buddhism, there's a saying, and all these sayings kind of flow into the same thing. There are a lot of phrases and examples and saying found in Tibetan Buddhist scripture and old world Buddhist scriptures and teachings. These are examples given that you would then ask the teacher about the meaning if you're unsure about something, or how you vibe with it. So you're going to be hearing a couple of things like that translated by me today. And then I'll kind of break down kind of what those things mean relative to the teaching. But the final version of this that Gelong Kalsang was quickly talking about is in Vajrayana Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism. There's another saying, which is that karma is kind of like a flowing river, so to speak, whether it's good karma, bad karma, positive action, negative action, action in general, and its effect. It is just a constant flow. It is constantly there with you. It is just constantly flowing down the stream. It's constant. Gelong Kalsang wanted to say that, in all these three traditions, the way they talk about karma is very similar, and it's pretty much kind of the same. And that is to say that is kind of much like how central to Tibetan to Buddhism in general, karma is, or the idea of karma, cause and effect. It's really kind of inescapable to human nature. There's cause and effect follows you, you live with it, you are a part of it, it goes on all around you, and it just is.
Later, so surround it up. Less. Yeah, which that the judge imagine. So surround it up all your initiative of your and so long, so long, so cock up your the Sanganika Rangilla Palor. Or take the motor Rangilla Palagas.
Somewhere.
So surround the sun. Yeah, much and much so surround.
And then based on that, we are all human beings, and we all are who we are. And we all have the ability to make our own decisions and be responsible for our own actions and what those actions may cause, bring about, positive, negative, neutral, doesn't matter. We have the ability to be responsible for our own actions, whether they're in Tibetan Buddhism, they're like positive and negative is the same. So whether it's a positive outcome that brings about a positive reaction, a negative outcome that brings about a negative reaction, or a negative outcome that brings about an immediate negative reaction, but there's a whole chain of positive reactions, or a positive thing you see immediate positive things come from, but they bring about subtle, and then a big negative reaction. It doesn't matter, it's all we're all responsible kind of for the actions that come into play. So based on that, it's really in your own hands. Your own shadow, so to speak, is in your own hands.
Well, when not motor, number should not be choosing, under the co choosing the layer and Mando Mission, call Yapomaton, essentially young Yapotana, and they were sending like better nations.
So whether you are the captain of a boat, a driver of a car, whatever, or the engineer, that made a design flaw or made a good design during the construction of things, one's path to what Tibetan Buddhists, historical Buddhists in any general sense refer to enlightenment or Buddhahood or escaping, the confines or bounds of one's own samsaric mind. You are the captain of your own ship, and you really spearhead your destiny, so to speak, with every action you take. So if you're driving a boat, or if you're driving a car, and you decide to have a couple of drinks, and, drive recklessly or irresponsibly and have an accident, that's totally your decision. If you decide not to do that and don't have an accident, that's totally your decision. So much like an example like that, if you want to kind of escape the subtle interplay of cause and effect to reach this kind of thing referred to as enlightenment, you really are responsible fully for yourself. Gelong Rinpoche was trying to say, as with all those examples, you're responsible for your own decisions and your own actions.
So I did some chepa titins, noa titins, ni, teni chepa titindi, ngama ina, tiwa ngama, me, dinka misa kentang, dinka tukcha chikin, se dilayang, se, rang hindi ko lo mo ko, se la ko. Teni yang, dugi choni sama, yagi choni shana, se ngama mili jibatang, chamning 저긴지 미니나 고소남지 제ring tani 메시안다 동닥당 텐데지나 첸딜랑도 네반타고 나데 나데도 어디 셰파티도서 나마 강세보다 내가디 주tin 주바인 맞다 텐데도 세서 죄송합니다.
So another part of Buddhism is the belief in past and present and inexhaustible amount of lifetimes, or people say in the West, the rat race, so to speak. So you succeed in one life, you don't succeed in one life, you have many more. It's okay. You can just try again and do it again. So there's this kind of energy and intentions, or shadow that follows you in every lifetime, as the example was before. So, for example, Gelong was talking about in the past, nowadays you have them too, but in the past you really had, so many warlords commanding armies to take fiefdoms or countries, capitals of nations, and the karma from something like that, or the energy from something like that, would carry through to many lifetimes associated with this individual, and they would have, an unquenchable bloodlust or a thirst for destruction, war. And similar to that, if you had a generous, kind, just really compassionate individual, similar to that throughout many lifetimes and iterations of who they are, whoever they may be, whatever they may be, that also follows them, and they will have, a sense towards decency or kindness in future rebirths or iterations of themselves. So kind of in that sense, and that kind of rough belief, so to speak, in karma, really in Buddhism, they really believe you must really be careful with your actions, your intentions, your mind in this very lifetime, and potentially every future lifetime. Your past lifetimes and your past are your past, and they are what they are. So you only have what you are responsible and decide to do now.
엘레 체파티티스 그런 강 마마가 체파티티 말할 아니바 될라 뇨아 티티스 뇨아 티틴도 카리스마 미마고 세펜 세게미티 체tuntum 밀라망고 동아땅 나라망고 오 텐제 세펜 세동 동에 네망 셀리티니 뇨아 티티스 달라 뇨아 티티는데 세펜 세tum스 담미 망고 베세 세컨드 망고 위창미다 세게 말봐 이네 미레디 개와가 망미 망고스나 개와들 채통통에 된 거. 담미 가시기 밀 동당 망고똥 냅게 망고슈 개 거라츠들 네파 개와가 망고 독자시가 되잖아. 다야 미 가시기 심체 솔로체 팬당 세린고 근데 체다당겨와 텐더민데 세린고 오 반조 나당 개고 테니 밀라타 멤버도 나가 미속 잡아서 밀레 팬타와 들이나 네메바 나가 가야메바 수감되고 오 텐데디 용용아 티텐스그를 텐데스
Dambishi Tamil Chegri Nian the Tech General Sang Abajan and all the
담비추 당마기께
The legendary one.
레전드 정말 켈링기로
That's not the legendary one.
레전드 켈링긴지 정말 주거를
That's not.
켈말링게는 그렇다.
That's not. That's not.
켈카메로
That's not.
Yes.
So, and then in the, sorry, I wanted to be really thorough about this one. So kind of in the broad sense of all the Buddhist traditions, historical Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, Hinayan Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism, they're examples of kind of the beliefs Buddhists have associated with the actions of each lifetime, specifically related, we're talking right now about like a human rebirth. But for example, in that regard, if, they kind of believe like, if in, this lifetime, you bring a lot of harm, chaos, and misery to many people over the course of your lifetime, a lot of death in your next and many future lifetimes or rebirths, no matter how much of an upstanding or amazing person you may turn out to be, the karma of that will cause you to have a very short span and a lack of opportunity to really build upon how amazing that life may be, how much better that life may be, and that just affects you and impacts you like that in a way that you have no real sense of in that lifetime, but a couple lifetimes prior, you're paying the karma for that kind of lifetime. So that's just kind of like an example or a sense of the scale when people talk about karma in Buddhism, the scale at which you're kind of going with, which is many millions of lifetimes for many, many nuanced kind of things and actions that one may undertake at any one of their current or past lifetimes. It's very kind of vast, and how that impacts and affects you is kind of what Gelong Kalsang was trying to give an example of right now.
Bueno, tanda 저랑 나봤다 들이 로바텔레 페차샤모 로파틀레 뭐 거의 기본 상 시대여야 돼.
Listen,
마말레 야코사
listen.
이제 야코미바 그래서 단데 마임바 단다들이 그래서 카샤롱바 사이엠메바 또르시 아니니 막다 쳐단다 알아들나 디에드가 레냐바사비 되고 그래
Listen.
시간 상황 기본동에 선로만도 두고 유명해서 지질라야 말에 이나 레디오 같은 레디기 그만나 한바디
Listen.
그때 제스 좋들
Listen.
나서
Listen. So then, when Gelong Kalsang was talking about in the Buddhist belief and in the Buddhist faith, kind of another example is, he said, you guys almost have a very good karma to really have found yourself at this really beautiful and peaceful, self-sufficient island that has such a vibrant community with really interesting things going on and a lot of self-sustainability and a lot of fairness. And I've noticed a lot of inclusivity, equity for the whole community. It's really actually quite amazing what you guys have here and what you're doing here. That's just me adding that on. I just wanted to say congratulations. It's amazing. Gelong Kalsang wanted to comment that, like, in his belief, in his faith, you guys must be people of a very high degree of good karma all your lifetimes. And he thinks that speaks volume to your guys' nature in this current lifetime and how you are now. And then he says, like, truly, Gelong Kalsang is, I just am adding a few more things here. Gelong Kalsang is very well versed and cares deeply about global affairs, geopolitics, and the suffering of many people. He really cares about everything that's going on, and in his own way, he's really, he prays and makes aspirations and helps out and makes donations however he can, to me at least. Like, but he was talking about how, for example, if you want to talk about the Middle East, parts of Central and Southern Africa, if you look at really the situation on the ground in many places, some parts of Southeast Asia at the moment, extreme poverty, starvation, lack of drinking water, real pain, war, chaos, and all these things, you know, in the Buddhist sense, that's like a sense of, you know, just like a total, you know, lack of merit. And as Buddhists, it's not the lack of merit that we consider horrible, it's the suffering that they're going through that we consider horrible. But then in the karmic sense, you know, we would say that that's just an example or a sign of an exhaustion of merit. So that's you know, that's just kind of like an example of, like, Rinpoche made the joke, like, oh, you guys have really high merit, you don't have war, you don't have, you know, a lack of food, you live amongst a decent and compassionate community. So I just wanted to give that as an example of stuff like that. That's all.
나서 단다트기 또
Line, but the just do.
나서 다트게 인디 되는 거 네 상보 지에디 돌라 다토 디셈발라라 삼바 삼라 사단라면 삼방은 사단 탐제 삼바 상라라 다토 삼바 상라 바리 우스치 손나 신경은 탐적이 삼바 상보티 다 창조기 선나 삼바 상보스나 창조기 생명 무체스인데 왜 삼바 상보다 참물라 요래 이나 창조 심디디 메사 야라워지 말에 아무튼이 어디 삼바 상보 창조 심바디디 대화야리 탐적이 현 한바도 또 샬라 네바 쉐디 마차바이나 teni shala pembardo samasang teni devan thokdi shala nepa tem sabache ducha chana devu dongan ngure ota teni di chema chesandi soso rangwa re ma to chi mi chi ko re seni angza she chikumare seni she yama rangwa soso rangwa
For that reason, you know, that kind of suffering versus not suffering, and how horrible that is in this lifetime and many future lifetimes. Buddhists really believe in this kind of supreme idea associated with cause and effect, which is compassion, and that is unapologetic compassion for all sentient beings. So what Gelong Kalsang means by that kind of, for example, is, you know, if you think or believe that as a result of negative actions, you will be reborn in a realm where there is war, strife, famine, anger, no way to bring about positive change, and a good effect for that region and area, just being stuck there. In the Buddhist sense, you know, that's truly unfortunate, and we lament that, and we want there to be compassion for people who would be in the regard. So we bring about compassion, and we, you know, practice compassion for all sentient beings. We consider all sentient beings, you know, to be mother from one life or another. So all sentient beings. So because of that, we believe that positive actions, whether that's, you know, donating to a nonprofit that builds sustainable well water building in Africa, so local miners don't have to pollute the waterways with mercury or something like that, so they can have clean fresh water. Or whether that's going to a temple, meditating and making aspirations for the benefit of all sentient beings, or for your mother, for your father, for a loved one, praying for them, as long as it's positive or good karma that is good for you and for the world. So that is why Tibetan Buddhists kind of have this, or Buddhists in general, I should say, I'm sorry. I grew up in the Tibetan Buddhist monastery, so I say Tibetan Buddhists a lot, but Buddhists in general have this belief that if that is the outcome, and you won't even know that's why you're suffering in a future life. As I said, Buddhists believe in karma, and you're just suffering without any reason. You could be decent person, a really good person. And a lot of people that suffer are good people, but they're just being affected from karma of nuanced lifetime ago. And that's not who they are anymore. They're just suffering senselessly. That's tragic. That's really tragic. So that's why Tibetan Buddhists associate with cause and effect this really important idea of just this kind of supreme compassion for yourself and for all other sentient beings. And that's why Gelong Kalsang highlighted the point of practicing compassion, and it doesn't need to be in a religious or spiritual sense at all. It can be, kindness to your fellow man, kindness to animals, kindness to the environment, being responsible for yourself, taking the time to pick up a plastic bottle that you didn't want to throw in the recycling, whatever it may be. It's just being a functioning to the best of your abilities, decent human being, because when you start thinking about the world as so infinitely complex based on just the actions you may undertake today, or how you behave, and how that may affect the you may be 100 lifetimes from now. It's quite immense and vast and scary and horrifying. So it's why we Tibetan Buddhists, Vajrayana Buddhists, Hinayana Buddhists, Mahayana Buddhists, all Buddhists kind of believe in this idea of karma, and then associate with that compassion and immense compassion. And that's kind of why Buddhists believe there's good karma and there's bad karma. And it's not, in the Hinayana way, it's kind of more for like, I don't want to be born in a situation like that. And then in the Mahayana way, it's more like, I don't want anyone to be reborn in that, because then it's really just pointless, unnecessary, painful, unbearable suffering. So Buddhists really highlight this idea of, once you believe or think of this kind of cause and effect or karma, that it's really important to have immense compassion, or the ability to at least treat people with patience and decency, and treat those around you with the same. So it's because it's very important. So that's kind of why compassion is so important once you start talking about karma.
alright,
Central, ngayon, this is
난데 먼저 타마든 내 약고 다 컨트롤 되니까 보고서는 약을 말해 쓰기도 나와 되게 동아 동아 탐 하고 동아 상계가 탐 동아에 하고 거를 동아에 하고는 동아 제 동아 신들 동아들 독자만도 깔라만도 기보여만 동아 다들 동아 빵네 대화도 상황도 하나씩 독자 전도상제하는 데이터다 백일에 그냥 동아를 다들 로직 동아들 견천이 동아를 다들 로직가 있으나 되는 것 같아. 기술라 메타과 거를 메타과스 되는 건 세력부터 세력은 뭐자 되니 자락 되는 거지 납자 되는 시기 독대배 남나 하고 자되게 뭐도 되니 타망한테랑 로야랑을 맞도 근데 되게 말 로충중 치와니 타마는 개보시는 타마 미스겐데 라타 동아만 보여 기비 동아는 먼저 하고 말이야 오충중을 나위 동아 타마는 기생기 나서 리와기 나다 트라키 나다 미기 나다 칼마 나다 제비 나다 어디에 때네 그 소설 레기오기 나다 좀 타요래 된 나위 동아요 나 차리면 되네 로케비 동아요 로 충중니 Cambodia, the Biomarti, Hindi, Cambodia,
Nasıl?
Chung Tar,
Deneysel
Yito,
vatandaşı ya.
oh, Suzera,
Hmm.
Ibleva, Topik Chevayana, Tamagaz, Kong, La Pala, I got some dogo, Gaidumaro,
Nasıl?
Gaidunga, Tenant of Vitawas, Tavinismat, Ming demand the Hakamare,
Nasıl?
not so, you know, long Kazi, you know, Hamapin Kazena. Am제 참 샤니텐데 랑기 리양 샤니텐 셈바티 레기 체스탄데 도고르마토 요마레 순간
Nasıl?
마고 타스마
Да, дексер ма, не, кена, чигare. Митак пати дан, ле джунже джаванги кане сошао. Di mita pati le jun okture.
다제 딱 그런 레기 데데 미타마티 레기데 당 베와요르티 나세타 그런 디나데 동안용 당토벌
Nasıl?
동아데
Nasıl?
동알라 넘버숨 요르
Aynen.
동알라 만데 동알라 테스 타와도 유튜브나 동아지 동아 아마 그런 동아 인바를 시작을 동아는 무슨 거고
Nasıl?
동아 식 맞춰 간 미용대도
Nasıl?
답변아 온딘데 내가 즉 동아 칼레 즉좀 대마서 그냥 답을 대박 그들이야 이콜레션은 나와 도게 갑니다
Nasıl?
나와 마트내셔널 되게
Nasıl?
그래서 단디 핸도다
Nasıl? Nasıl?
깨져되냐 보여
Nasıl? Nasıl?
암졸로다냐 보여 말해
Nasıl?
스스로 팬다고 그랬어.
Nasıl? Nasıl? So, and talking about kind of karma or suffering, and then why we have compassion. There's another kind of little bit of a, like, it's not, I mean, lower in the lesser sense, but just like a subcategory of that, where Buddhists kind of talk about how there's, first of all, there's a lot of suffering, and then there's a lot of not suffering, but kind of when you're born, there's the nature of kind of impermanence, the impermanence of everything. And then I'll get to how this is related to karma at the when we close this portion out, because otherwise my brain isn't going to work so well. But so and there's many types of suffering, but here's what it is. We are all impermanent. Everything is impermanent. We are going to die. Gelong Kalsang was saying he doesn't know nowadays. He's heard there's some crazy scientists and clinics and tech out there that people are trying to get to, 100 is going to be the new 70. He's heard, he doesn't know if this is the truth or not. He lives in Nepal. He doesn't know stuff like this, but he said he's heard stuff like this. But regardless of that, we are all going to die one day. And that in itself is the impermanent nature of yourself, and then things will end. So that's kind of this impermanence he's talking about. And there's a lot of suffering from that. You're born as a child. You may not think of it now. We all may think about it. I certainly think about, back pain, for example. I have a lot of that now. I didn't have that when I was 10 running around. So that's another prime example. When we were born, we have things that we consider suffering. We age, we have more things that we consider suffering. There's more and more suffering, and that's all associated with this kind of the nature of impermanence that we all kind of interact with and participate in. So suffering is it's very vast. It's very relatable. You can see it, you can view it. But you also have your own sufferings. You age, your loved ones age. There's sickness. Career paths may not have worked out. Someone, just can't get it together, and they, end up in jail. There's many types of suffering, and how this is kind of related to kind of cause and effect in the Buddhist sense. Like, so also Gelong Kalsang wanted to say, it's not the most beautiful thing when people hear, oh, Tibetan Buddhist teacher, this Rinpoche from Tibet came to Nepal, he meditated there, he's like done so many meditations and all these great teachings and all this stuff. To hear about like something so simple as like impermanence, death, suffering, getting older and thinking about, all that could have been, what you've missed out on, all these like it's like, oh, it's such a humble teaching. I feel so bad saying this, but he hopes maybe hearing this there will be some help in this, and we're getting to that in the sense that this is kind of the truth. This is all impermanence. We are all impermanent, and this in itself is suffering. And how to address that is to first and foremost, Gelong just said, is accept this. And then based on that, you kind of are like, okay, well, there's suffering, and then there's, in the Buddhist belief, of course, there's suffering, and then there's karma, there's cause and effect for this suffering. Why am I suffering? Why is this happening? What is this for? And you're just kind of stuck with this kind of impermanence. So he wanted to really just kind of highlight just a simple kind of thing about suffering, because he feels and hopes that maybe accepting impermanence in some ways. He's a Tibetan Buddhist teacher. He's done his meditations. He's, in my generation said, he's chilling. He's good. He's happy to meet his mind any day. I think it's just another walk in the park. But he really hopes that if there's something that he could bring benefit to today, outside of talking about karma and the kind of subtle nuances of past, present, and future rebirths, is to really accept kind of the nature of impermanence in itself can be a really huge step in your personal life. And just be like, okay, this is impermanent. It's the nature of things. There's these karmic nuances. There's these suffering in my life and in everyone's life, and we're probably contributing some pretty crazy futures right now going on, whether it's in this life, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's the next day, whether it's several months from now, someplace halfway across the world. There's a lot of stuff going on, but he hopes that just kind of reiterating and him explaining that there's a lot of suffering in your own life because of impermanence, but being able to kind of hear that and work with it and relate with the nature of that might be maybe he hopes can be a bit helpful for anyone, or one person at least in this room today. Listen up.
나서 등나도
Julian Jagan Yamana.
능지 다시 걸어
Listen.
그나도 좀다 녹저다가 그거
Listen.
아메리칸도 좀다도 베니스가 데라다오메스 그런 거 펠레야 펠레에서 나치 모스처럼 빼야고도스
Listen.
아야고도스나
Pele is in better.
펠레스나 펠레 그러고 같이 보파 밀라 가오도 딩니셔란 같은 닝타파니
Listen.
ora 닝타파 마임바 같이 보셔기죠
Listen.
밸런스 그러는
Listen.
아이스나 그럼도 배 메시 다가미 달랍다 난강 냠다파 롭다 딘들라 무슨 그런 로버셔야 되니 텐데션 텐데체 망보셔 텐데 나마춘 단다야도 단단 제신바 텐데 누트더로 만들 뻔했어 좀 가보려라 안데 가보려라 숨도 봤어 하지만 맨가마로 지금도 랍다로 삼발라로 지금도 어딘데 뭐로 지금도 반저 그래서 나도 되게 된단다디 단다 아메리카 게다 충분히도 거 막아서 코데 밀라 망발라 카프로 와체 망발라 반저에 와서 팬다기도 와 디딩한도 다기 장직 셈바신 셈바상보세 셈바상보에 놓고랑 신기 밀라 팬다기로 와 셈바가마 나미랑 신나 빠데 막다 주고 세랑 되게 주고면 되선 그 말와 어떤데 근데 셈바상보가 어딘데 doktor라 근데 제시랑 셈바가 오시는 나도 다 채워드 셈바가 상 어떻게 됐어
So Gelong Rinpoche also wanted to say just a few things, and then I asked what this word pale means. I'd never heard it before. And he's like, there's some people, have two faces, they smile and they say something beautiful, kind of like a charlatan. And, and they say something and don't really care. They're just trying to say something for you to believe and don't really believe or care about something. And Gelong Rinpoche says, he hopes you guys don't think he's that, because he's about to say some pretty praiseful things about Americans in general. And you have to remember, relatively speaking, Gelong Rinpoche comes from one of the most, lives currently in regards to Nepal, one of the most impoverished countries in the entire world. There's not that many, there's not much social justice, equality, stuff like that really going on, so to speak, there at the moment. Hopefully that would change. So Gelong Rinpoche is really speaking from his heart, and he means this sincerely. And we have talks about this actually all the time. We have these kind of discussions about this. He's a really cool guy to have, a Tibetan a discussion in Tibetan with. But you guys, he says America to him as a Buddhist, and he means this because I think this kind of is lost in translation sometimes. Buddhism in terms of spirituality, I had a conversation with this with a friend of mine who was wearing the cowboy hat, has the beard. He was in this room earlier. His name's Joey. Buddhism really likes the idea of like the Red Cross or the Red Crescent, and like going out and doing stuff for the benefit of the poor, sick, the lonely, suffering. It's amazing to us. We think that's like the most good karma you can do. Like really, truly, that's like amazing. So in regards to this, Gelong Rinpoche wanted to say, to him, America, and I understand it's a very complicated thing. You guys have this constant tradition and this kind of culture, at least I would imagine a lot of people in this room do, of really having this kind of globalized view of the world, what's of benefit, foundations, nonprofits, charities, immunizing, whole villages who have had polio. Like I grew up in India. I've seen villages wiped out by polio. And then I've seen those, future generations not having to worry about that because some, foundation decided to donate millions of dollars worth of polio vaccines and inoculate the whole region. Your culture, he said, this culture that he's noticed is something kind of unique to whatever this spirit or this quality that you guys bring to the table, he says, is so compassionate and profound, and it really inspires him all the time. Really, he says it's amazing. And he wanted to say that and praise kind of the better aspects and qualities of America, because you guys can have this kind of dual view where maybe that's on the decline currently at the moment, but whether it's outside of the US or inside of the US, there's still this retained culture of like, well, that's kind of wrong. Let's see what we can do here. How can we benefit this? How can we make sure this island stays sustainable, the water stays clean, and we don't pollute anything, and we help out our neighbors with a food bank or co-op and stuff like that. He says this is really, in his belief in karma, this is like such good karma. And it's not that it's like going to be exhausted in this lifetime. It's like you guys have this culture almost where you continue this just common sense kind of Buddhism, his spirituality, so to speak, where it's like, oh, it's common sense to do this or contribute to this because there's either, a trying to create a positive outcome or letting it just be kind of a negative, bad, unfortunate outcome. And he's just wanted to say, thank you guys so much for kind of having this really, just almost like a lot of you guys, a very selfless kind of culture, and contribute to a selfless culture. That's amazing. I grew up near Nepal. I grew up in a region of India, and yes, I know there's corruption and so many things in America that I can't even begin to address the issues. But in Gelong Rinpoche's mind, it's like what he sees living in Nepal, and he experiences the benefit of this, is a globalized society of people that want the best for others. And I think that's why there's like such a counterculture or more of a progressive or positive culture associated in Gelong Kalsang's eyes with America. And he just wanted to say this is, in his opinion, talking about karma, suffering, impermanence, such a great thing, and it's really good. He said this is a good thing. And he said, sorry, like this is like just
Dane ngandala sambang ngembat tumache samba sangbo tu yana lega chilo lega thongwa samba kichikira sambal tani chungti tende chintin samba adro samba lingla shite yonga ta makto ki jiwa meba sali jiwa chui jiwa mei jiwa lungi jiwa jiwa shidwa o jiwa shidi lumba kashela mei jiwa lumba kashela lungi jiwa lumba kashela chugi jiwa lumba kashela sayo jiwa onde sanke namande de yongre sunya tande tamje meba tini shide onde de lumba no himuji tamna shide yako yong malam ma malam jako tana malam jako onde de jure
So, kind of speaking to that again, Gelong was saying, there's regions of the world, natural disasters, war, famine, you can't even, the thought of being charitable or good can't even exist, or you don't survive. Yet America and many parts of it, or some parts of it, has many qualities where you don't necessarily have to really worry about that on the mainland, and yet you still choose to have positive culture, so to speak, of, in the face of all that, of helping them, trying to contribute to positive outcomes for all of those things. And he just wanted to say it's really amazing, and to please continue in your own ways to try and continue to be like that, because he thinks that's, in his opinion, that's like that's good karma. That's really good karma naturally. That's like naturally wanting good karma, and that's really good. So in that sense, there are many places in the world, and this is coming from Gelong Kalsang as a master of meditation and a guru and a teacher and a Tibetan Buddhist master who has faith and belief in his practice and his path. He says he wants to make an aspiration with the presence of all of you, if there's any merit in the Buddhist sense of his teachings, if it's helped anyone today, create anything, whether that's a belief in something new, interesting thoughts, or to be inspired to, be still be a compassionate or kind or decent human being. If there's any benefits or positive karma or merit from this, he wants to inspire, he wants to make the aspiration that this karma, this good karma, is sent out to regions and zones of the world, and to the whole world, where there is still suffering, there is war, there is famine, there is not even an opportunity to have the thought of taking a bunch of people's wealth and making, a fund that would, donate polio vaccines to some parts of the world, and make the aspiration that the world can become a quieter, more tamed, and more peaceful place for the benefit of all sentient beings that are here, that are coming. And that he says, please also everybody make this similar aspiration. He says, thank you so much for attending tonight. And he said, he says, this is just the Buddhist faith and belief. If there's something that, if what he said is like okay for you, great. If there's something, that you think is just a total mistake, or you can't accept, okay, no problem, that's okay. If it was just like, kind of like, okay, kind of thing. That's also good, you know. He said it's just, you know, this is how he thinks and what he had to say. That's good.
맞아.
Legal şeyindeler.
단도체 그냥 됐던
Dann çüzü dümpü bardı en samsung nasıl çüz dümpüle röre tamam dam var ban dam var çüz dümpüne nasıl dine tangorio da da çüzü çıksam nasıl yam çüz çekatam midin so julian parser the draw chikje the draw chik be karşısına nasıl çüz dümpüle dine tangorio tamam ban ban var dam dam dene yan konum so color pia yang düsü şalgoydu dene nasıl Şutu gruptan çeka bardı nasıl davşik Julian Drawoji Jagin Bella. Nasıl? Okay, so Anna, do you want to do that kind of? Do you want to still pursue the Q&A or do closing remarks? What? How do you want this to go about?
Maybe we can just see if someone has a question and have a few, maybe what we'll do is have like 20 minutes of questions depending on how the interest. And then if anyone wants to make an offering or seek a blessing from Rinpoche, we can
Yeah.
do that at the end.
Fantastic. So what we're gonna do, we have to get out of here probably by 7, and that means all the doors, everything locked up and closed. So 20 minutes, as Anne said, 20 minutes of questions and answers. Gelong Rinpoche also has a project in Nepal, which is his own personal monastery that he's trying to construct and build. It's called Zandapari. It's kind of like a spiritual, the idea is creating a spiritual representation in a material sense of an abode of a Tibetan, the founder of Tibetan Buddhism, Guru Rinpoche. And it's been his kind of, since he was 13, his kind of main goal in his life. And I've seen him for the past 20 years inching forward to this goal. So if you want to make a donation to help support him to try and create this, that's wonderful. That's great. If not, totally also great, no problem. But that's what if you want to make an offering or donation to him, that's what it would go to. And then so we're gonna have 20 to about, I think 6:25, 6:20, we'll have questions and answers, and please keep them kind of easy. It's not the easiest language to translate. So we'll do about 20 minutes of Q&A starting now. And then after that, if you have any offerings or anything personally you'd like to say to Rinpoche, I think we can close out that way. Does that sound good? All right, fantastic. Does anyone have any questions at the moment?
I'll hand out the mics,
Okay,
as long as it doesn't create feedback.
I'm gonna turn off my mic and let them.
Yes, just one kind of thing I've always kind of philosophically pondered upon was how do you make of actions that different philosophies could interpret as being positive or negative? For example, donating bottled water to people in sub-Saharan Africa or anywhere really. On one hand, you could say it's positive, it's good, we're helping the community drink water.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, with all that plastic ends up in the ocean.
Right.
And it causes climate change or
Right.
whatever. So how do you feel like it's just different types of karma? Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. How do you think that overall balance would manifest itself in this
Sometimes
reality?
maybe it's a little bit of both, right? Okay, yeah. So, Gelong Rinpoche mo di le junde nang la be me se ma ro chung chung ni chenpo ne chung chung be me se kali kapu chik shetang chik re mare dene di wandu mo di ju di re be chi jana pa Africa la mi din so konso chu tong mang chi chu tong e koran yo mare ene mi chu pu na konso chu di plastic bottle nang zuk sha yu dene chu pi gi do konam so chik di ta na konso chu rasong ka komyo mare chu ra gi do mi shi gi mare ene chu di plastic di thangma jamsula draw samshin mangboshi dene plastic nyam du je gare yore dene di namshe jikten gi namshe konso climate change global warming so yu marela di namshe chabozo yaman namshe yang drangmozo migizo yo di dene di mogi juwa zo di gandsrezana jikten dambichela ina ichela ina chitana mimangi samlo tang tang dagshik Henry la iche jeken mi chila if ma chicken meat and so consula chik dela pemba do chik dela pemba mendo then dela samotane chik di kakom ya meat in so pa Africa la 주제나
응?
템퍼여를 코난 버소라 에냥 내 콘소 시기 말에 콘소 카콩이 말에
네.
에냥 디젤라 직든라 데스 너버 계기도 말해라 데네 디 가리 플라스틱 디 체네 디 다네 디페 다네 디 간데스 사무탕 거래 간데스 제거래 디 원데
그때 서울당에 방문을 내려고 그래요.
너스다
서울당에 가고 먼저 미세어 장을 만들지. 철론이 등록심증 기세요 말이
너스다
사시 기세요 말이
맞아.
먼저 밑장장 기세요.
너스다
밑장장에 나면 직전에 체리때 할래비 약고도 이 지나 체리 라떼니 데서 막 보세요.
너스다
아마 있는 내절시도가
네
아랑중스니요 말이 아주 파일에 차잖아. 빨랐어요 말이.
너스다
되니 칼락사는 딘데요 말이.
너스다
지야요 말이. 빨랐잖아. 소소 칼락사서 디 신기 포와래.
너스다
토마티 카셰 신기래. 소소 트리, 소소 구, 소소 사,
너스다
빨라스 시에서요 말.
너스다
거의 빼짱 말이. 이 단다 세리 세고이나 야가비 야케로 세고이나 지나 야케로나 뭐 니나 야케 말이 팔레스티기 네팔에 사셨나 팔레스는 바죽라 네팔 망고테기
네
팔레스체 팔레스티 내라고 팔라도 그 망보가 되기도 텐데신 네팔라 텐데 자사 일람스사로 그 팔레스 베제체 조금만
너스다
시우면도 베제체 시우도 탈라고 이처럼 삼 빼야 버려 거기 보면은 먼저 draw me 됐어요 말
너스다
점적 심증 등로 미 탐제 거기 보면은 됐어요 말 거기 때 성적세 빼내 심벌에 성적 되는 아마 별에는 거의 심지어는 성적이야 거기 라마 샵가 토로로 되게 공 솔라다 냐라야 차트 망보 사기로 봐 차트 사마주 다 레다도 세 마주 리타탐 거스
너스다
리타탐 신들라 리다 세 조금 왔다
너스다
아운티는 나다 자서
너스다
근데 라마도 똑같은 좀 나요 덴데치는 거의 중급체 타마 먼저 농범이 혼자 돌아와
너스다
미련 관리 잘해 대체는 거의 쓰면 삼고 빼야 버려 팔라스 메나네 양 추디
나 주면은 양식이래요
양 팔라스 메나네 요 말아 마데란데로
나나
내제 메나 딜라 과트는 좀 말아
맞어.
내제 테고 디테는 거의 계획적으로
너스다
직전에 지금 뭐 직전 지금 나 제가 삼을 빼야 버려
너스다
거의 또 뿌라 털라 그런데니 zambuling dila kese nada pawa tawa de tongkutu kaptane
너스다
sape tengla ta ke chikchana ya potongkutu ni chen rangjung de pura chula tangsha
너스다
rangjung jorwa
너스다
terka thangme ngo
나나
nang di pengu ser ngo rinpoche ngo
나나
tenga de minang la kalma loa shimbat mena mi shiguro zambuling sa kokoti nang di chala mangotena ni 마차로 또 샤라 밥티미 밥 마밥티 차로 먹고 밥 근데 이 망보게 돼 근데 저기 되는 중국에 어쨌든 가져갔다 탑시 먼저 그 사모 땅에 맞아 그래서 탑시 땅에라 먼저 니바요 말아
너스다
야 비총게 총받기 콜라 총용 거 말아 어떻게 됐습니다 야 뒷면에 동사매로
나나
니요 연한 양지 쪽보여로
너스다
이 쪽보여는 육사 영어로
너스다
이거는 전도 사유로 깔래 갖고
Gelong Kalsang wanted to say he thinks very good question because it highlights kind of what he was trying to refer to maybe in a spiritual dynamic, which was the suffering of suffering, right? Like it's like okay, let's get into what Gelong Kalsang had to say. So he said, this is a very good question. You bring up a really interesting point, right? So on the one hand, you have people who don't have access to clean and fresh water, and any water they do have access to that isn't found in bottled plastic water is probably going to kill them, right? But then you give them plastic water and they don't just kind of die of dehydration, right? Or they don't die of dysentery or something like that. But then you have the plastic from this bottle of water, and then that goes into the environment, where it goes currently in like an area like that in sub-Saharan Africa. Maybe there aren't. I would doubt there would be more than 2 actual like real responsible plastic recycling plants reachable in any logistical capacity there at the moment, right? So what happens to that plastic, right? And I said, so what he's seen from like documentaries and stuff, right? The plastic goes into, whether it's the ocean or landfills and trash. He gave an example in Nepal where he lives. There's so much pollution and so much plastic that they have a lot of livestock cattle, and the cattle just like eat the plastic, and it just causes a lot of damage to them, right? So it's like he's like, yeah, this is a very complex and complicated question, and much like the highlighted nuance of karma, it's very nuanced and very complex, because on one hand you have people dying of dehydration and don't have access to water. On the other hand, if you give them that water and then their thirst is quenched and they have a supply of water, then it's like bottled in plastic or something like that, and it's causing harm to the environment. Then he went into talking about and you're addressing something related to like climate change and eco-sustainability and the planet, right? And that we all live on it, right? So it's like he's like like human beings have this kind of like nature about them, which is a very self-destructive nature, like our society as a whole. Like the whole has a kind of very self-destructive nature. It's like even back in the old days, so maybe not now. Now we have scientists, engineers, chemical engineers that are creating exotic materials. Maybe in the 1920s, 1930s, plastic was the exotic material at the time, and it became the most cheap, mass-producible thing. And then we're really feeling the impacts of that now, right? And our planet is too, and we're finding it at the deepest layers of the ocean too. We're finding it in our bloodstreams, microplastics and stuff like that, right? We're finding all this stuff, and that's just like an effect. But he said, even now, still, even before that, then, like humans had this issue. Okay, there's silver in the ground. Let's tear up the ground. There's gold in the ground. Let's tear up the ground. There's diamonds in the ground. Let's create blood diamonds and start an entire industry based off child soldiers, right? There's like, this is the nuance of living and existing and interacting within an impermanent cause and effect, like this kind of realm of suffering. It's just so nuanced and so dynamic in its nature, right? So in this sense, it's a really good question, because you're highlighting kind of this phenomena or this issue that Buddhists kind of like in a spiritual sense, maybe not in a materially like practical day-to-day kind of like material layperson would think about, right? Like the complex nuance of like suffering, right? Because on one hand, like you can't like they need water, right? Like they need water, but on the other hand, it's like poisoning the planet. And it's a good question. And this kind of question he wanted to highlight is kind of just like his response would be, first of all, good question. Second, the response is he thinks it's like, yeah, it's just an example of suffering. This is his response, because there's levels of like karma. There's like, okay, there's the good karma of donating to an organization that is getting clean water to them, and then having to maybe find an eco organization that's trying to find a responsible solution what to do after they have plastic, right? Yeah, so it's like, it just highlights the nuanced thought process we all have to undergo while we kind of relate with this kind of cause and effect that we all have and interact with in the world. I hope that's a good response.
Hi, thank you for being here since speaking. For something so intuitive, I'm having difficulty breaking through a sitting meditation on my mat at home.
Okay.
I don't know why I'm getting in my own way. It's like I don't know how to start, and I've never been able to just start.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I just
So
can't seem to break
okay.
through with it. I can do walking meditation just
Okay.
fine, but sitting on my mat at home, I'm I've never been able to break through it. Wondering if there's any simple advice on how to start.
May I ask just a quick question? When you say a sitting meditation, does that involve like you just doing breath work, clearing your head, or you just like just being there, being present in the moment? So what kind of a sitting meditation do you mean?
I
I'm
do have
sorry.
breathwork
Okay.
methods, but that to me is different. I
Okay.
just mean sitting like crisscross applesauce on
Okay.
the mat. And
Okay.
like just being present. That's the
Okay.
latter of
Just being present. Just
Yeah,
being
yeah.
present. Okay, for sure.
quieting the mind, so to speak.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
나서
Gelong 거기 저 그 믹서드 담보 다시 내시기도 그냥 다시 내 good to meet you so 그 다시 내시기도 then 이제라 거디오지요 그 믹서드 그 참드야 지네 고만 바닥시 곰지요래 거 곰디 포마 죽된 직라데 then 그 죽된 라운데 선호당 코디 고츠야 라 베카레 중도 세이데 코 죽든 라메 데츠네 코셈 파술 앵데 아던디 코고츠 쉐기면서 코다고식 딜리 치네셔 코고츠 투기면서 세이데 데니 코디 원도 간 버제 코가 인지게 advice 세이데 말베라 랍시 드라고 지겨로 말해
그걸 강한도 와 간다 먼저 곰타요만 개자자 하자마셔 파다 그만도 선도 파 양대하러 강하요만 안도 스볼로야고 주는 것도 스쿠스 줄때도 강한도 선물다 부탄길 결혼한 나라 마루 sem yang marwa yang mayang botten sem mayang botten chin damre ten damre sambamati bravo om damni ya ko yong me kala kanga yo ngaji o tenga ati 밥제 때 가리 선 야나 안도 디라 공작도 남도 락파타 하와 남 당념스 숨여를 남도 락파티 슈팅 엄마 세빌레가 앞에 양 just simple 시랑도 넘바 샤용 양 담데 메라 착선 기남바 샤용 착선 시라
노사
샘데데데
사
담데 가야면 양 많이 쿠여도
노사
대승대 공기 곰라 바쳤던 게 유지를 했다. 대디 태어나고 말에 탐절을 그래. 기나요. 태어나 야포샤나 야포카네 야포샤사딜라고 다저저 거를 했다. 야포 탐복하니 실로니샤도 나로니샤도 하티니샤도 야랑사를 때서 내랑사 되게 말. 취념만 하시는데 말만 하시고 그러려 바로 그것도 되나셔라 안 될라게 하는 게 되니 남도 아니랑 그런 걸 맞춰봐 되게 생각하는 맞춰봐 서주만 보죠 남도 샤나 거 시작한 거랑 알아 다 아니야 두자 샤나 두자 거랑 알아는 거랑 양도 약고 샤나 약고 샤나 거랑 알아는 거랑 양도 그래 어떤데 진짜 가네 되는 검도를 했다. 되는 아마 샘디 근데 준에다 삽삼ချက်되지 요만 아마 상대기 되네 조친 나와 처벌해서 상대기 로마지 정도가 더 고검장로 컨나시지 저는 뭔가 저는 하고 연구 됐어 이거 저는 연구도 상대를 쉬어서 저런 검장도 그것도 딘데 땅도 백해버려 두었어 기타 좌대 다그 나만 되는 저런 검마자 걸로 저런 대단을 캐버려 왔어 그래서 땅 앞에 먹고 캐버 푼듯이 봐 있어 상대 이나 디다디 땅도 그바디 탕아가도 그바디 협아가도 따따라가도 간다서 가장 탕아야 말 가장 협아 따따라다니까 다리 야고요 그래. 저런 게 세바자한테는 화장 준비만 하잖아. 나봐 나잖아. 그 야고요 남도 누구 섬시대 저거 저거 그래. 근데 나의 삶을 때 삶을 놀랐다. 나다 또 어디 있어서 나라라고. 어디 또 대자만 버텨서. 대자만 버텨서. 남도야 보지. 남도 임바 하카와데 검자게 따라서 안당한도 검자면 뭐 센바 양대로 근데 대뜻은 양사 요마로 뭐 생각
So this is just his, you want to say, these are just his thoughts, but in kind of the Buddhist sense in regards to meditation specifically, they're kind of, they say there's like three main factors of distraction or obstacles to meditating. And that is being a little too lazy or sleepy, letting your mind kind of drift off and kind of nod out. The second one is just distracting thoughts just arising, just the rising thoughts. And then the third is just kind of focusing for no apparent reason and focusing on that focus, right? So Gelong Kalsang wanted to say that, if you are having some difficulty started, right? Like just like being present and just being there, it's in the Buddhist sense, they believe there's a kind of three main reasons for this that I just went over. And then from that, basically, if you examine, naturally kind of examine if you're having discursive thoughts that are arising, if that's preventing you from, or you're thinking that, hey, I'm trying to start just being present, I'm just trying to start being here. If you're focusing on that, you can examine that and you can examine and be with that thought and examine the root of that thought. And much like a river, like he was saying, talking about that example of that, just that river, just like flowing water, just kind of flowing, and you're just really with that thought, you're kind of entering into, you're entering into getting away with that kind of obstacle, right? Like you're just examining the nature and being present with whatever arising phenomena comes up into your mind, and you're entering into a meditative state one way, like, for example, like that. Another issue people are into, as we said, is like I'm just like nodding off and dozing off. And when I was a monk, when I was into that, I was guilty of that a lot. I would just nod off every time. I would just fall asleep, and then you might feel sleepy or have trouble in that regard. And then and then another one is you might just be focusing too hard on trying to start, but like trying to get there. And then so he gave an example of back during the Buddhist time, the stroke Buddha. He had a student who was a monk, and he was complaining and talking about how he wasn't having success meditating or achieving awareness, or, enlightenment or peacefulness doing the meditations that that he'd been prescribed. So he went to the Buddha and decided to ask some questions. And then the Buddha was like, okay, what was your profession before you joined the monkhood? And he was like, I was a Gita player, which is like their version of like a very, very old kind of historical Indian instrument. It's called the Gita. And then so the Buddha was like, okay, so you're like really good at playing it or not? And he was like, yeah. And so the Buddha was like, if I give you a Gita right now, and you played all three chords on it, would you tell if they're too strong, too loose, or just right? And he was like, yeah, of course I could tell you right now. And he's like, and the Buddha was like, okay, perfect. So that's kind of like the ability to which you can be a musician and play that guitar, and the confidence you feel with that, because you're just confident, you know what you're doing, you have this practice, kind of like that. Meditation is very similar to that, right? It doesn't come easy. Some people might naturally be gifted, for the vast majority of people. It really doesn't come easy. It requires like a lot of practice. And that practice comes from repetitive, that the perfection comes from like that repetitive practice. So much like one string's too loose, one string's too tight, one string's just right, and then you're focusing on that one string, trying to make it sound good from that, but there are two other strings that just aren't, just humming along. but you're focusing too much on that, or you're trying to make the one string that isn't right, like kind of sound good, and you're focusing too much on that, or, you know, the one string doesn't work and you're just like giving up on that, much like that, you have to really practice, you have to, like, if you're having trouble starting, Rinpoche is like, first of all, this is a great question asking. He's like, good, you're meditating. He's really happy you're meditating. And then he just wanted to say that like, it shouldn't discourage you. Not being able to start shouldn't discourage you from practicing, because if you don't practice, you will never be able to become a rock star, you know, like it won't happen. So in regards to, you know, what he had to say in his opinion is like, from what he knows, and he's like, I just humbly, this is what I know in like the Buddhist sense, there are 3 obstacles, as he said, that one may have to getting started meditating. And if you're, and obviously, like, we can't say what the rising issue is, but you shouldn't give up practicing, because it's really good you're meditating. Yeah, that's
Yes.
May I ask a question? May I ask a question?
yeah.
That is an occupied country. And today, in this time and space, can feel like living here is in some ways
Okay.
an occupied country. Any advice for living in a place and time where the leaders are at odds with your heart and goals?
Line. So I'm just gonna preface this, that this one is on a recorded Zoom for our community and our Sangha. And Gelong Rinpoche is currently here on a visa. So I'm gonna keep this as nuanced as possible to keep it all kosher and peaceful, but I totally understand your question. So, and this is gonna be the last question we have time for. I'm really sorry, everybody, but this is kind of the last question we're gonna do, and then we're gonna move into everyone saying hi and individually getting Rinpoche. But let's get into that. Then Gelong Rinpoche, that the months arila kind of say Tata nganse mimangchishe, also nganse pumpushe gore, tata pumpade.
Yeah.
Ko shedamambu mimangchishe ko yamchishe na she. Arila luxochi gore, mare yanla pempa the Microsoft Foundation de la console vaccine je the DJ the some rangshin gore. Ine nganse tata pumpo di kodila shedamambu yaputana kodi shedamambu jegimendu deni luxo kaka rawochi gumso shegidu. Deni ko shugidu. Yana bache can be nam. Böder요. Böddilayang gyalkop shenda bödchik chomre. Deni Maozedong ko sarpa trim sarpa tsukre gyarbishe yangi kampa laksong nangi laksong benduskra wuchik jumsong. Deni ko zegidu arila lukso dibra wuchik yore samotang yore ningje gawa zen yore enyanda desh kaka chabro gidu. Deni ko central garjigidu sana ko nyema kui kangpore nangshin rewa dan tepa yori arede koi kangpore date shi kaka rawu chaya deni ko central jegidu deni ti wongdo ina ko des sem lulu kibu madea chikrawu jungido marvela di chini gyanar bache kyan jangwo mangwe kyangi mitsinala kutsinala kali mangu jungre budlan di rawu gyanar bache jangwa samotang rawu di sem central Mambo Jungin Serbo, then Kodrawoda, then the central Kibo Mekodrawo Jungidu. Di Chine, Sam Hulu Kibu Chine, Labja Drawo, Yoreve did it.
Kong lang kong to bro.
That's a
Wrong jahe, lamning sayo mare, sayo mare. Karachana good day, and the chief caption by your mares. Kambotilla. Nivantilla. Hogan did it, Yahochimdo, Tandi. Anga somebody pomuto, some guy, somebody. Shut us some matans. Thing on the Tatashan, Karmas, Taki legend, the Sherva, legend on the Kotungo. Yeah, Miman Samalata, 음보, 약보, 참보, ngama pebo. Kasi yapo chungdugal kang ali pebo kasi ngama tete pebo kasi minta hakong pe mi mangla chambo yakabla ya te mangbo chungdugal. Tiang le yong tanda tiang le tiang ngatu chungbare. Dila sem tiang sem mache. So sem basla le chitini kola pa. Angarang so yapo yong melam pe jaya mando. Pe sem bala kanga mangbo tena sem kibo ango mare. Sem kibo mena liyang na liyang kanga shokre liyang sem kipo mewale teni nada yung garwa di tangay ko yapo yung asho osam ni jalan de te samla de chata mabu matang tang na de pendo kayang meri pendo niba te tuya merwa nga de chikate je me tarjemi de yi teni kangdam takwa tempa dil degi mare yang yuwa te progre lakta yuwa te progre anda kan Bena chashana namda tishi nangshinge yakasha na gungasha tungasha na tanda ko bini chungbare te yang shungma ya tele yaga nyasigiri la tele samda shita machi samda ten pendo yo mare pent matawa gala kirang samla kanga shini kusula yapo yungu mare de shita samla mata paa temba de jeshe yapo cho yunga sho sini 건적 요래 건적 만도 남바 상계 쇼다 건적 숨 요래 이슈 그때는 이슈 파타르 마타르 안데도 장족세 비트와 장장을 섬쟁게 탈라 남바 카가이나 상계랑 그 주바 인기리 텐데 인디 텐들라서 어디 시대 용하쇼 야고 용하쇼 셈 헬레 신쇼스 셈다시라 땅마땅 야마데 땅나도 팬더지 강야마를 뜻다 That's the visual.
So Gelong Rinpoche wanted to say he totally understands the question, and I tried to translate the kind of parallels and the nuances there. And first, he wanted to say, like he has, in terms of losing your homeland, your family, and your country, he has experienced a lot of pain over this. It was 11, I believe, when he ran away, had to flee Tibet. And so from his experience, it's not very empowering to the individual to lament over the suffering and let that bother you too much, because that's not going to help you. And that's not going to empower you or give you energy or strength or anything. It's going to really hurt you and cause your body. If it's psychologically hurting you, it's physically going to cause some detriment to you. So he said it's really important not to let that that affect you in that capacity in a negative way. And then in that regard, he wanted to kind of highlight again, like kind of the teaching he just gave on cause and effect and karma and circumstances. The circumstances that he was born into was he was kind of one of the last generations to ever be born in a non-occupied Tibet. And then the effect of that was he had to flee his country to Nepal at age 11, right? So much like that, that there's suffering. And that is the reality and nature in the Tibetan Buddhist belief and the Buddhist belief of the Phanom. And that is the reality of the world we live in now. However, much like cause and effect and karma, and everything is impermanent. And in that regard, as I said before, he said, you can't let these things really affect you in that negative capacity where it's really detrimental to yourself. So in that regards, however you may feel, whatever that is doing to you, however that the current situation and political climate in America is affecting you, your loved ones, your community, your people, your friends, people you may know on social media in another part of the country, in both a positive and negative way. In that regard, whether you are Buddhist, whether you're atheist, whether you're just, hey man, I'm just here to chill and get on with my life, it is really important in the spiritual capacity, Gelong Kalsang said, to make positive and good aspirations and to have a real learning experience, to have a real kind of like shocking kind of experience where you're like, oh, this is the reality of suffering and the phenomena of cause and effect, and this is the cause, and now this is the effect. The effect is I and many others are feeling this way, and there are reasons why we feel this way, right? So really, if you're going to let something affect you, really let that kind of awakening kind of affect you and be with that. Don't let it hurt you. Don't let it cause you too much mental anguish, because this won't empower you to do anything. So in that regard, also, he's like, oh, in Buddhism, we also believe in impermanence too. This isn't permanent. This is impermanent. And then how you come about and how you interact and relate to the situation now is fully up to you, and which is why he encourages you not to let this put you down too much, because if it puts you down, then you're just losing and someone else is winning, So in that capacity, yes, there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of sadness, and really complex range of emotions. But you can't let that make you down, or it's not benefiting you, and it's not benefiting those around you, right? So he says, please make a positive aspiration for peace, kindness, and decency. If you want to be a political activist, do actual action. If you want to think about what the cause and effect of all this going on and the outcome of this being is, go ahead and live your life in that regard, change something, maybe do something a little bit different, or live as you used to be living, but don't let it hurt you too much, really, because he has experience with this. It really takes you nowhere, and you would just live with that your whole life, and it's really not good for your health, mentally and physically. Awesome.
Just add one thing to that.
Yeah.
I think someone said, I read a book and you said they're trying to aim for compassion over empathy.
Yeah.
Which sounds like counterintuitive, but I guess maybe the thing is like you internalize the pain too much, then it's just gonna stifle you.
Yeah,
So
that's
some kind of boundary.
Yeah, that's what Gelong Kalsang was really trying to say in that regard. Like if it's if that's the situation, and the situation is kind of doing that to you, it's not benefiting you, it's not good for you, and that's how you deal with that is up to you. And having healthy boundaries is a very good way to take that. I think I think we all are. Okay, Lasso. Okay, everybody. The talk is now concluded. If you want to make a donation, see Rinpoche, say hello, feel free to come on up here, and thank you all so much for coming. It was a really good time. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't need to make a donation. If you just want to say hi, please also come up and say hi. Yeah. Come on up. Oh, yes. Okay, one more thing, everybody. I apologize for this. So in Gelong Rinpoche's Tibetan Buddhist tradition, which is more of an oral tradition, student to teacher, student then becomes teacher takes another student, passed down kind of in an oral tradition. This is something called a protection cord, and it's something called a protection cord, and you can either wear it around your wrist, or Gelong Rinpoche will tie it around your neck. He has meditated and prayed over these with Tibetan Buddhist of the Vajrayana tradition. And he in the Buddhist belief, you have a master of meditation, and they pray over these protection cords, and they're imbued with, if you want to call it, good vibes and positivity. They're really imbued with stuff like this, and if he really believes that handing these out is good for you, and it's kind of like this thing he wants to give to each and every one of you for your good karma, good fortune, and spiritual health. Listen. Listen. And then everyone, as you all have your busy lives, your day-to-day lives,
you know, everybody's a part of something, everybody's got to make a living, everyone's just surviving, everyone's just trying to do their own things. And he really understands that's the culture out here, and that's the culture of the world. And he's like, for taking the time out of your busy days in your lives and making time for him and to hear what he has to say. Thank you so much. It's really decent and amazing of you. Thank you for your time. And it's good to meet you all. And he's very happy at the fortune and the auspicious interdependence in this lifetime to say hi and just give everyone a little talk today. So thank you very much. Good luck to everyone and good health.
Love. Oh, Lassa. And then if you, when you get this, you can just knot it yourself. He's gonna place it over. You can knot it yourself. You want to take it off, wrap it around your wrist, wrap it around your car, put it in your wallet, whatever. You can go ahead and do that. Ni nang yürübela. Yeah. Yeah, you can do it around the wrist too. Any, either, whatever your preference is, sir. But just traditionally is gonna put it around your head and then you can place it wherever you want to. That's for you. And you can tie it. So, thank you. More than you, but capture challenge to grow, but check it on my then there's more on tissue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. It was a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Like getting, have to go.
No problem.
And you're off tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, that's my mom. I gotta go and figure out my life. Yeah. I used to be like a paramedic before. I know. I got divorced recently, so yeah. Yeah, fun stuff. It was a pleasure to meet you too, Sally Bell.
Sally Bell, she came off the ballot. Thank you.
Oh, no, I like. COVID ke dan hari gitu project keluar. Yeah, man. Good luck. I know how you feel. Then consider your jacket. Chick Nanaje, young extra chick. You could take it.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day. You gotta tie it yourself. The long life protection cord is talking. Okay, Mr. Kim, chase you. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Ty, there you go.
I grew these flowers. And
Oh, well, good.
this, yeah,
Oh, sorry, I was just translating. Yeah.
do you know any practice in,
Oklahoma. Okay, there is a lady in that blue dress back there. That is my mother, believe it or not. She would know. She would know for sure. She would know for sure.
buddies?
Oh, neato.
Yeah.
Nice, dude.
So when I saw you guys yelling the mic, I was like, wait.
Yeah, I would ask her.
Okay, I will.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. You gotta tire yourself.
Oh, I-
Hey. Famous case for you do that. Thank you for coming. Have a great day.
It's beautiful. You did a beautiful
Thank
job.
you, dude. I've been in like 3 car accidents this year, so my brain isn't used to it. Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, 2 technically. Yeah, 2. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm taking care of
I will,
yourself.
thank
Be
you.
careful.
Destination, do that. Rinpoche will feed you. Oh, maybe you can give it to Rinpoche. No. You give it with your hand to Rinpoche. Hold on it, look on it, so that it's up. Hold up and oh, yeah, of course. Pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
good to
much.
meet y'all. You have a beautiful island, you guys. Hi. Yeah, you guys go. If you did the time, you would be out of here at 9 o'clock. Yeah, it was a pleasure to meet you guys, Riggs, and good to meet you. You guys have a beautiful island, man. Yeah. Of course, yeah. It was a pleasure to meet y'all. Thank y'all for your time. Oh, yeah, it's a good family friends at this point, you know? Yeah. Yeah, it's good meeting y'all. Have a wonderful evening, okay? This chick will come for less. Yeah. So. But it's just you.
You're selling that?
Of course, I will tell them.
I've been stuck in a lot of sorrow.
Yeah,
For the world. I got it. Feel better.
of course.
You know,
Fantastic. It's, yeah.
I just.
You just tied
I
it.
cannot.
Yeah, you can not. Fantastic.
We did look at it. So much for that.
I grew up in Asia. Countries. I've had the pleasure of spending my, I was born in Asia, there's a lot of spending time here. And for whatever it's worth, there's a big majority of the population that's still winning in terms of good karma, I think, compared to a lot of other parts of the world. And the world needs that. You know?
I know, it's about this carbon hood. It's like,
It's all
so.
very nuanced. You know?
Yeah.
Everything's so complicated. And the whole world, so everything, you examine something, it's a million times more complicated than just that. And then you get to the issue, and then you're like, oh, this is caused by this. which I need to think about. One more.
You can't even
A lot
look
of-
at it.
A lot. You are, okay. Sure. Pleasure meeting you.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. Hold up here, like that, yeah. Okay, sorry.
Okay. I just wanted to get you.
Good. I'm sorry, totally.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry about
Oh,
that.
no. I just wanted to thank you.
Of course, yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for
Yeah.
coming. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for everything.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. I just gotta make sure everything's sorted through and then, yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Många jämförelser All right, thanks. That's right. Thank you.
Back there, if you ask for the name.
All right, sorry, it's oh, yes.
And this one.
I don't know, I told you. Always been this.